G'day mates, my name is Napoleon. Now you're probably thinking, wasn't Napoleon some French bloke? Well, you're bloody off on that one, mate. It's about time someone handed you a tinny of truth to get you up and running. So listen up, I'll tell you what really happened. It all started off with my stag do back in Oz. I was totally off my head on the old magic apple juice and ended up blacking out. My mates are a bunch of dicks, so they'd left me wandering beside the billabong so they could laugh at me when I fell in, which you can bet your last dollar I did. But the truth to the truth was that the billabong was magic or some shit, because the next thing I knew I was sitting in some fancy room surrounded by a bunch of freaks, pouncing around in these old-fashioned clothes and bowing at me like I was the fucking Buddha. But it turns out I was one better. The year was 1805 and I, somehow, was now the King of Sardinia. Now I'm a decent bloke, so I think I wasn't going to cop out on this because of some banging headache and a little surprise. I thought, well, you know, you don't get to be the king of 19th century Sardinia every day, so I might as well do it right. Turns out that was going to be a bit of a stiff one because the place was a fucking dump. No one had any money, and I quickly found out why. The last king had been busting into people's houses and stealing everything that wasn't nailed down. Half these bogans didn't even know what numbers were, so they didn't realise we didn't even need to do that to break a profit. So I shut that shit show down right away. Bang, the island's GDP stopped declining there and then. Next I was told that the reason no one on the damn island knew about the rest of the world was because our docks were literally just a pile of bricks and a mound of sand. Well, now that the workers weren't busy rustling bloody candles from the peasants, I was able to get them to shape it up a bit and maybe put something together that wasn't an absolute waste of time and space. Of course, everyone was a bunch of shut-ins, so no one actually knew where the docks even were. Had to dig some fucking mud roads to show them the way. Jesus, I knew 1805 was in the mister past, but I never thought it was this shit. Or maybe it wasn't that shit everywhere, just in Sardinia. I found out that they had a literal gold mine right next to the city, but were still jacking people's waxworks for money all that time. Why did they need money? To pay the absolute joke of a standing army they had going on. I couldn't stop laughing at this one, mates. They actually thought that some wannabe is going to come along and invade the shittest island the world has ever known. Gone, I fired a lot of them. Although I had to keep the old-fashioned cannons around because none of our half-witted blacksmiths knew how to make them anymore. I asked the men we had left to shape up just in case, but not to take it so bloody seriously. Clearly no one gives a shit about Sardinia, not even the Sardinians. So there we go. Pretty much all in the same day I'd got Sardinia back on the right track. I was a top king, no doubt. Just had to wait for it all to come together now. Although along the way I ended up kicking out a bunch of my ministers for being a bunch of arses. Not that I ever really understood what they were saying. I wasn't picking up the lingo that sharp. But you could tell from their faces which ones were the real bastards and needed a good boot up the behind. Probably. By spring, things had picked up a bit and I'd come up with another phase to my plan. I got the roads paved so it wasn't like walking through a bloody swamp every time I went outside. And I started getting together some ships. I'd figured that since Sardinia didn't have any good shit, we could probably just start nicking it from someone else. There was a fuck ton of coffee, spice, sugar, all the stuff I was going crazy without. We just had to steal it from the neighbours. Plus we had more gold than we knew what to do with after we got that mine going, so I thought we can probably just buy stuff from the real countries, maybe even buy a less disgusting population. People were actually willing to give me donations when I went and asked for trade, so I made a couple of hats of money out of it. I think they thought I was down on my luck since I was wearing my khakis and a That's What She Said t-shirt instead of all that regal shit. I knew that fucking t-shirt would pay off one day. So anyway, I started a pretty long mission of getting all the ships together and looking for stuff to nick. The first one started pilfering of March of that year. Already after like 3 months in power, I'd fucking doubled the GDP of that island and it was growing nicely like the joey in my pouch. Pretty impressive, but hold your applause, because you're fat if you think I'm gonna stop there. So let's jump forward to halfway through the first year of my reign. We had pretty much monopolised that legalised theft industry, lifting all kinds of crap from the rest of the world. Except my damn next door neighbour Sicily, because the French were on them like flies on dung. I was getting so damn rich that when some minister said I should cover the roads in metal or something because it would enhance national prestige or some bullshit sounding reason, I was like, sure, why not? Here's a blank check with my fucking signature on it, write whatever amount you want. I'm off to take a shower in pirated tea. It was all fucking lush. Same thing happened when they were like, do you want to invest in Star Forts? And I was like, yeah, blow it all, because I thought they were saying Star Wars with their weird accent. Turns out it was just making our forts pointy so they looked like stars from above. A perspective literally no one had. Great purchase, bin the receipt. Let's skip forward again, because that kind of thing went on for a while, until about December, when I finally thought it was time to get a little bit more serious. By then we'd pretty much doubled GDP again, and the people were fucking ecstatic with the way I was running shop. We had a farmer's fortune in the bank, probably would have been even more if the mainlanders weren't busy killing each other. Half our buyers in France got killed, and we ended up pulling like 12 grand of stock and selling like 4 grand every week. Pretty soon half the houses in town were made out of sugar, tea leaves and beaver furs. Anyway, I decided we needed to get a little bit more up to date as a nation, get on the same page as everyone else. But I found that every time I suggested what to do, no one knew a thing about what I was saying. They hadn't even heard of shit like steam engines or letting the proles have guns. I realised I was going to need some blokes cleverer than me to work this all out before I went mad, so I started scouting around for a school or university. Sicily was just as stupid as we were, but in Italy there was a place that was just the ticket. A university full of brain boxes right there for the taking. Only problem was it belonged to the bloody Pope. My diplomats told me that the Pope was kinda into me, and that his allies in Naples were too. Well, Struth, if that ain't nice, but they're not gonna agree to ship all their smarties over to me just because I asked them nice. It was time to act like a real king of 1805 and get bloody military. First, I checked out a few ship ideas people had been floating about, then just asked them to make the biggest fuck off ship they could manage. Then I put out a request for anyone in town who wasn't a total mouth breather to head up to the barracks, grab a gun and a silly hat and meet me on the edge of town for a little get together. It was time to assemble the first army of the mighty Napoleon. The real one, that is, not that fucking faker wannabe who was pissing about somewhere in frog country. Now it took a few months to get all the shit together, but soon enough we had a true blue army of Sardinian crazies ready to loot us some bloody professors. I had to give these blokes a general to keep them under control. 3 weirdos volunteered for it. No idea who they were, but I realised that one of them had a nose that would frighten the life out the enemy, so I just gave it to him. Everything was coming together. The army marched down to the dock where my fuck off big ship was waiting. Plus I almost had a new tiny ship to sail right next to it, so it would look even bigger by comparison. It was the original D-Day, and if the Pope knew what I had in store for him, he would have been shitting himself long before he reached the woods.